how are you going to get to the front of the queue when somebody wants to lend £200,000 and you know that he's asked you for a summary of your deal, but you know as well that you're competing against other people who are putting their bids in for the money. And the first thing I want to say is that what I call peer finance, i.e. borrowing money off other people, is very, very different to institutional finance. Okay, the decision-making processes, everything is very, very different. The only thing that's the same is that the money is the same when it ends up in your bank account. But you've got to, in my opinion, to be successful in getting people to lend you money, you've got to be able to live in their shoes. And this workshop is really about living in their shoes. And if you can understand what's going through their mind, what questions they want to have answered, and if you can have that all pre-prepared and everything, and you can present that in a credible way, then there's a good chance that you'll be front of the queue in order to get the money. Because ultimately it's an emotional decision. It's a gut feeling that the lender's going to have about you and about your project. And your project may not necessarily be the safest project, but it's going to look like it is. And safety being another thing that I've made some notes here, and I'm just putting them up on the screen. Safety is the primary driver of a lender, of a peer lender. It's not the profit. So getting into the shoes of a peer lender, you're not there to say, I'm going to give you more interest, or I'm going to give you an equity bonus at the end of it worth this. And because I'm pitching a better, profit for you, Mr. Lender, than the next person, I'm going to get the deal. Actually, it might work against you doing that. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to say to the lender that your situation is the safest, and the lender's going to sleep well at night having lent to you than anybody else. So I'm going to pull up a blank piece of paper and share the screen so we can just write some stuff down. So just bear with me. And I've got my crib notes, which you can't see. Okay, so we can see that now. If I'm a lender and I say, listen, I've got some funds available, do you want some funds? And you say, yes, I want some funds. And I say, well, can you just give me a brief of your project or your bid or whatever? What do I need to know? What are you going to tell me?
When the basic outline of the project.
Christine, can you go first, and I'll grab Graham because we.
Yeah. Well, I would start with the basic outline, the headline, if you like, an exec summary of the project, what it is, what it's going to be, what you are now, where you are, A, where you're going to be, B, and how you're going to get from A to B, and how much it's going to cost, and then your financial breakdown.
Yeah. Graham?
Yeah, when do you get the money back and how?
Brilliant. When and how? I'm just going to write that down. Is there something actually that headlines above all of this that I need to know?
Your background?
No, it's much simpler than this. I like the when and how. I like those sort of words.
How much?
Thank you, Sue. You know what? I'm not kidding you. More than 50% of the people who come to me for money when I say I've got funds don't tell me how much they want. I'm not joking.
Well, that would have been in my financial breakdown.
Yeah, it could be, Christian.
No, it would be. It would be.
How much? The reason I'm saying that is that you can't believe how many people don't tell you how much they want. They'll tell them, they'll say what the GDV is, and they'll throw loads and loads of numbers at you, and they don't actually say how much they want to borrow.
So you want it done Dragon's Den style. In other words, I'm such and such person. I'm going to. I want to borrow X amount for this.
I'm addicted
right
to
up front and centre.
It's amazing how many people go on Dragon's Den and actually forget to include it in their pitch. It does happen.
On the when, I think when there's quite an important bit on the when, and I may not be approaching this in priority order here, but you know, as we think about it and talk about it, we'll write it down. But on the when, the drawdown is really important. Okay, drawdown when. Now, we have had a situation where we agreed last December to lend money, and we hadn't lent it by June of this year. And there were complications. So it wasn't really the fault of the borrower, but that was the outcome. So that's kind of important because, you know, once I've said, Dan, I'm going to lend the money to you, I'm not earning a penny from that money, but I've said that I'm going to lend it to you. So I've got to keep that in the bank until you're ready to draw it down. Yeah. So I might go 3, 4, 5 months earning nothing off that money until I start earning. So if you then say, I would like the money and I'm going to have it in 4 weeks' time, I would like it in 4 weeks' time, then that is actually quite an important aspect to the whole thing. And that's why auctions are quite good, because with an auction, you know it's going to be 4 weeks after the auction. So you know it's not going to drag on, whereas a normal conveyance can drag on. So how much, when, I've written down why, but I think, to be honest, Christine has covered that with the word summary of project, and the numbers and timescales. So what else do I need to know as a lender?
Build costs, GDV.
Right. Yeah.
Exits.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay. At least 2, but as well preferred. Yeah. So this is our preferred exit, and this is our secondary exit. Keep going. What else do I need to know? Another really obvious, you know, one that goes in sort of the same category as when and how much.
Security.
That's coming. I'll put that further down.
Price. Price.
Okay. Project costs, price. I'm going to put that there, Sue.
I mean, price of the money.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Interest.
Yeah. Okay. But,
Yeah. It's actually what I'm looking for is who is the borrower. Okay. So that's really important, and people just, yeah, you know, the emails I've been getting and things like that. Yeah, I'd like to borrow this. I've got this HMO project on that, but there's no mention who's going to borrow the money. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Would you want a lot of background then on them, as you know, their experience, what they've done before, as well?
Come on to that, but that's not what I meant by who is the borrower, Christy. Okay.
Just a name.
Is it ABC Property Limited? Okay. Is it Christine Janaway, or is it a joint venture between Graham and Dan? Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So we need to actually know.
Is it something unconnected to anybody?
Yeah.
As one of the members has discovered. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really important to know who is the borrower, and when the borrower is a limited company, you know, then, well, it's very easy for me, the lender, to find out, but I'd be interested to know who the stakeholders of the limited company are. And if it is a limited company, then obviously the next thing, which I'm sure somebody's going to shout out before I write it, is it going to be guaranteed personally? Because no lender in their right mind, and there's many of them who are not in their right mind, would lend to a limited company without a personal guarantee. So you take it as read if you're borrowing from a professional lender, you know, if it's a limited company that's borrowing the money, then you're going to need to be putting up a personal guarantee, and not just you, because if a limited company has more than one stakeholder, then you'd be looking for a personal guarantee from you know, all the main stakeholders of that company. So that's really quite important as well. So if it is a limited company, obviously at some point, I don't need to know at this stage, when we go through the more detailed due diligence before we agree the final lending and everything, I'd like to have a little bit of a look about that limited company, look into it, you know, is it an SPV for that project, or actually has it got lots of assets and has it got lots of liabilities and what else is going on there? But also you want to look into the guarantor as well, and this is something I think I just would spend a bit more time on this evening. You as a personal guarantor, insofar as if you say that I'm going to personally guarantee this loan, okay, you really ought to be saying what your net worth is. Okay, that your net assets as an individual. Okay, because there's no point in me lending to somebody who's guaranteeing it, who's got, you know, negative net assets or no net assets. Okay, but if I'm lending money to a guarantor who's got 10 million of personal net assets, that's a huge security to me, insofar as ultimately, you know, it might take me 10 years or something, but ultimately I'm going to get my money back, you know. So what I'd like to sort of, what I thought might be of interest is to really understand, do you know how to calculate what your net worth is? You know, fag packet based.
Nope.
All your assets minus all your liabilities.
I think it excludes your home.
What your own equity? When you include your equity in your home as your net worth?
Not do, no.
I don't, yeah, because you can't you can't use it effectively, Graham, from Rupert's side of it.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, I was just there's a book I was just recommending to someone earlier, The Millionaire Next Door. It's a great book. And they talk about it in there. But I'm not
Heard
sure.
of it, but I haven't read it.
No, it's a good book. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm back in the room now. My speaker turned to AirPods as they walked past me. So, Sue, can you help us with, have you done it while I couldn't hear you? With
What I said was I think it excludes the equity in his home.
Okay.
Because it's not really available to you, Rupert. You're not FCA registered.
True.
So it's not something you can use effectively, not
True.
without an awfully big hurdle to jump through.
Yeah. So excludes or just needs to be, you know, disclosed.
Well, ideally you'd have the information, but I think you would assess it
Yeah.
on everything barring the home. And if somebody had 500,000 outside their home and somebody had only 500,000 in their home, then the other bloke would be a better bet.
Yeah, I agree. So if we were just going to work it out, if we look at the big stuff here, you know, so the cash that you've got in your bank accounts, the value of your home, the mortgages on your home, the value of your shares. And this is quite an interesting one, because if I'm lending the limited company the money, there's potential for a little bit of duplication here that we need to be aware of. But we'd be looking at the value of the company, okay? But of course, we're also looking at the value of the shares. So if you own the company, you know, 100%, then there'll be a similar figure. But if there was two people owning the company, that would be potentially split. But you know, the value of the shares of all of your companies, okay, form part of your assets. Okay, and if you're not sure of the value of the shares, you just look at the net assets of the company themselves and just put that in, you know. So if you've got a company that's got, I don't know, £1 million worth of property and £500,000 worth of liabilities, mortgage liabilities, then you're around the 500,000 plus whatever's in the bank account. So that would be your personal value if you own that 100%. Is there anything else we need to add to that, Sue?
Well, I guess we need to assess whether there are any personal liabilities, like something, you know, some old tax liabilities or something held personally. If we're going to have the asset value of the home, we need to look at the personal liabilities too.
Yeah, good. Okay, and I think that's something you can all go away and do. I think it's something you should all know and have to hand. You know, if you're in the pub and you're talking to a potential lender or something like that, you can say, well, my net worth is X. I know some pretty good people who are some of the Unity members, and they'll be able to tell you what their net worth is. You know, and that's really important as a security, and it means that you as a guarantor is probably, you know, one of the strongest points of security, even more so, or even equal to any security that you might have on the project property or on another property. Because if you're lending to somebody who's guaranteeing the loan, and that somebody's got £10 million of net assets, you know that it's, you know, a lot safer to lend to that person than it is to lend to somebody who has no net assets from that point of view. So that's the guarantor side of things. Now the other thing is, Christine mentioned about the project costs and the summary of the project. What's really important is all the funds, and this is what people don't tend to communicate very well. Okay, so if the overall project cost is going to be £500,000, you know, and you've got a purchase price of X, and then you've got the legals, and you've got the finance costs and all the rest of it, and you build it all up to £500,000 with a GDV of £750,000. What you should be telling at this stage is, where are all the funds coming from? Not just the bit you want to borrow, but where's all the other funds coming from? Are they coming from institutional lenders? Are they coming from family members? Are they coming from your personal funding? Are they coming from the cash of your company? Okay, because what I'm looking at here is I would not feel comfortable lending if you or your company didn't have any skin in the deal. And what we do find is that people will go to an institutional lender and they'll get their 60% LTV, and they'll get their development finance agreed. And then they're looking for all the rest, plus a bit more, from their peer lender, because they want to do this project without actually putting a penny in themselves, which is all very well if you can find the lender for it. But it's an important thing, if you're looking for a lender, you really need to be letting them know where all of the funds are coming from. Okay. So we're getting there. The other thing that is really, two other things I think that come to mind here. One is concurrent projects. Okay, so you've just found this deal, you want to do it, you want me to fund it. How many other deals, how many other projects are you currently underway with? And also I've got in the back of my mind, although I can't control it, is how many projects are you going to have during the term of that loan? How many more deals are you going to be doing and going out to other people to borrow money during the term of that loan? Because what I'm trying to ascertain here is just, you know, how much liabilities have you currently got? Are you currently taking on? Okay, and if one of them falls over, are we going to be seeing a domino effect, where one of them is going to just knock off all of them? And you know, the one thing that I'm very, very cautious of, and I deal with in the legals when I lend money, is that I never lend money to people who can just shift it from one project to another. So I make it very, very clear that in the legals, okay, that is that's agreed not to happen. And I normally have in the legals as well either a reporting protocol or a clause that would say that information will be provided to me within 14 days of request. And I do like to see on longer term loans of 18 months or so, I do like to see bank statements from time to time of the SPV or whatever, to satisfy myself that, you know, the funds of the SPV aren't being drawn out to pay for holidays or pay for another project that's gone haywire. So that's you know, this domino effect, this house of cards, as I call it, is a really important part of my decision making there. And the other big important thing is experience. So we're not just looking at what is your experience, but we're looking at is what experience have you got of the project that you're planning to do. Okay, so you might be a really experienced HMO converter, but this project is 89 flats from an old mill. Yeah, and if you're doing 89 flats from an old mill and you've only done HMOs before, then I'm afraid I'm out. And the other thing that would be very helpful to you, I don't think it's a prerequisite from a lender's point of view, but would really helpful for your bid, is experience of borrowing off other peer lenders. And I think that is a really strong one. I never ever see that in a bid, in a summary or whatever, but you know, it's just a line to say I've borrowed from peer lenders 4 times in the last 5 years, and I've paid back all the capital and all the interest. And if you wish to talk to them, I can provide testimonials. That is really strong.
So helpful, Rupert.
You know, so experience the project of borrowing. So I would be nervous. I would advise against anything sexy in like equity bonuses. Yeah. I don't think it's necessary. I think that, you know, if the lender's wanting to lend, the lender's got in his mind that he's happy to lend, depending on the risk and everything else. He'd like to get 1% a month. He might be happy to do 10% per annum. Okay. He's not looking for the biggest profit. So this idea of, you know, saying, well, I'll give you an equity bonus if I sell it for a GDV above that, you know, I think that it can put people off as much as it can complicate it where it doesn't need to be complicated. And it may be better just to say straight interest. I pay, I'm happy to pay the 10% interest per annum. And then the only thing to consider then is, are you going to pay that interest monthly, or are you going to roll that interest up? Okay. And it's not a bad exercise for you to get a little spreadsheet and understand the numeric difference between the two. Because the way that you would put that spreadsheet together is, if you're going for a rolled up interest, then think about you're paying that interest at the end of the month, but then immediately borrowing it back. Okay, so if you look at your account balance, if you like, you've borrowed £100,000. At the end of month one, you owe £200, £500 of interest. Okay, so you add the £500 to the balance, and then you calculate the next month's interest on the new balance. Okay, and you just do that all the way through the 12-month loan to the end, and you just see at the end of that on the spreadsheet actually what was the true interest, because a rolled up interest of 1% versus a serviced interest, where the interest is actually paid to the lender every month at 1%, is a different proposition. Yeah, so it's worth just understanding the financial differences between those two. It's not massive, if I'm honest. It's, it is significant, but it's not massive. But it's worth understanding that. And when you're having those discussions, you might want to be sort of saying to the lender, yes, but my interest is going to be paid monthly, but and not rolled up. And paying monthly interest, if you're able to do it, is really, really strong, in my opinion. From a peer lender's point of view, if I'm basically that £200,000 that he's going to lend is £200,000 that you may have started life without, and may have spent 4-5 decades getting to a point where there's £200,000 that you can actually lend and want to get a thing. People who've got that money feel it's the result of their lifetime's work, and if they were to lose it, it's an absolute disaster. So if I'm lending that for 18 months on a rolled up interest basis, at some point, normally about month 4, I'm going to be starting to think, I wonder where my money is. I wonder how it's doing. I wonder how they're getting on with that project and everything else. Okay, because you've not received any money back from them at all, and you're not going to receive it for another 14 months. And it's a long period to go without any, payment, any return whatsoever. You're wondering, well, maybe they've gone off to Australia and you'll never see it again. Whereas if you're being paid interest on a monthly basis, it's that connection, that regular communication, the fact that they're paying the interest, that you're actually receiving money, and that they're in the habit of paying you money, gives a huge amount of psychological comfort to the lender. If you're in a situation where you can pay interest on a monthly basis, and often that's not the case, but if you are able to, then that's really, really powerful. But within this proposition, I'd be wanting to know, how are you going to fund that interest? Have you got a trading business? Have you got a buy-to-let business that you're funding the interest from, or whatever? Or are you just borrowing more than you need in order to just drip feed that interest back once a month? Because the other less psychological but more practical advantage of having the interest paid monthly is that if the costs go up on that project, and the build costs and everything else during the course of that project, it's the finance costs that are being rolled up that can often end up being the straw that breaks the camel's back, that can be the difference between profit and loss on a project. But if you know that that interest is being funded from the working capital of a trading business or an investment business that's quite separate to the project, then it eases the pressure on the project. And that's why I always like the, well, the two reasons why I always like serviced interest. It's not, in some projects, it's just not appropriate, you know, to have serviced interest. It's not a problem, but, you know, it's something to consider. The other thing's a little bit more sort of woolly, I suppose. Personally, I don't like these pre-prepared brochures, but I know that some people will respond to pre-prepared brochures and think they're very good, and actually, you know, it's a positive. So I think you need to sort of, you know, gauge your potential lender on that. The pre-prepared brochure might work with one lender, might not work with the other. I personally don't like them as a lender. And I don't like anything that's salesy. Anything that's salesy, the smallest amount of salesy comment or whatever, is just having the opposite effect. Okay, what I like is fact that can be backed up with evidence, ultimately. So statements such as your money will be safe with me, you know, is the worst thing that you can say, because it's completely woolly. There's no evidence you can back it up with, and it kind of, you know, it suggests you're a little bit more desperate than you know. So personally, I hate anything that's salesy. And I come back to the statement I made earlier. Instead of saying your money would be safe with me, if you then say I've borrowed from individuals 4 times before, returned all the interest in capital, and they'll be happy to provide a testimonial, that is a factual statement that can be evidence backed up, and that means your money will be safe with me. Yeah, it means the same thing, but it's stated as a fact. So I would personally, if I was trying to borrow money, I would definitely err against making any sort of emotive, salesy statements. But the other thing I would bear in mind is that if you do get successful to borrow money, then once they've lent it to you, you have to, it's not an institutional lender. What they've basically done is that they've put personal trust in you. Okay, you've been very successful in winning that trust, okay, and the project and all the evidence and everything else has supported that, but ultimately they've chosen you. It's an emotive decision of personal trust, and that's deserving of thanks. So whenever I borrow money off somebody and they, after the drawdown, I always send them either a little card or I send them a little email to say, I really appreciate that you put your trust in me with your money. Okay, I think that's definitely worth considering. But the other thing, which is perhaps even more important, is that when an individual lends you money, okay, then that's their personal money from their personal household, and there's normally more than one person in the household. Okay, and ultimately that money is their estate. So that money, if they never get it back, it's not just them that's going to suffer, it's their children, it's their spouse. I always, or certainly where it's appropriate, and in a situation which I've had not that long ago, although I only spoke to the individual lender, I happen to know that there was an influencer sitting in the background there, which was the spouse of the lender. And I happen to know in my mind that he wasn't going to be able to do it unless she'd said yes. Okay. So in that situation, even though that she wasn't involved at all in any of the communication, once I got the money transferred, I then made sure that all the communication, particularly the thanks for putting your trust in me, was addressed to them both and not just to the one individual, because I really appreciated the fact that, you know, this is a risk that is shared within the household as opposed to just the one individual. So, you know, easy little things to forget, just little tips there that just, you know, helpful, because ultimately when this goes well and it comes to the point that you're going to be paying that money back, normally the response will be is, well, actually I was quite enjoying the interest, you know, do you want to borrow it again? You know, so you need to keep that alive. And in particular, in terms of keeping it alive, just, it doesn't cost a penny to send an email once a month, and just with a literally, you know, this is how the project's going, these are some of our issues or whatever, and just be, you know, extra communicative, just respecting the fact that this isn't institutional finance and this is somebody's personal money that they've worked very hard for. Those are some of the points I've made. On the subject of security, first charge is always good. It's not always available, particularly peer funding. You've already got institutional finance, you're looking for secondary. You can have a second charge on a home. That's not regulated. You can't have a first charge on a home. The personal guarantee with somebody with assets, to me, is a very strong tick, and I would be happy to take a lesser security on the loan if I know that I'm dealing with somebody with very strong personal assets. The other options on security, you can have a second charge, but you will need to get the permission of the first charge lender. So you can't be sure until that permission is sought. You can get a restriction on title, which is relatively straightforward to get. It's not a very strong security, but it will prevent that property being sold without your consent, without you lifting that restriction. So that's another security option that can be given. And the other security, which I've talked about before, is that where the limited company is the borrower, that you can, and where the limited company has already got a primary lender, institutional lender in there who's got the first charge, you can actually take a charge on the shares of the limited company. And I've done a loan before where I've taken the security is a charge on the shares of the limited company, which would mean, you know, if the shit hits the fan, you become the owner of that limited company, but you also, then the limited company owns the asset, but it also owns the liability to the primary lender as well. So that's the situation. So there are a few options on security, not forgetting, of course, second charges or first charges on completely unrelated properties. So you don't, you know, when you're looking at first charge, it doesn't have to be on the project property. So if you've got a little flat somewhere that's unencumbered, that's great for putting security down on peer lending. Anything else in my notes? Just going through to see if there's.
Rupert, when you're lending, do you prefer to lend in one tranche, or if it's a longer project, would you really like to see it done in drawdown in installments as the project advances?
Yeah, that's interesting. It doesn't really benefit me to do it in installments because I've got to have that funds available. So all they're going to do is sit in my bank account, earning nothing. So actually, I'd rather lend the full amount from the outset.
Okay, no, fair comment.
Yeah, but I think you could, you know, re-engineer that question as, you know, if you had 400 grand to lend, would you prefer to be lending 400 grand to one person, or would you be prefer 4 lots of 100 grand and spread your risk? And I think that as a borrower, one thing you need to be bearing in mind is that you got your institutional finance all laid out and everything else. The total of your borrowing is maybe 400,000, and you know, from your peer lender, you're looking at 100,000 that you want. You've already secured the 300,000 from the institutional lender. you might find that your lender, your peer lender, would rather have a first charge and give you the whole 400,000. So bear that in mind as well. You know, when you're saying, well, I've got 300,000 in the bag, I only need another 100,000, but I can't give you a first charge. You know, well, if the lender's got 400,000 that he's prepared to lend, then, you know, forget the institutional lender and just borrow the whole lot. You know, and give them a first charge. So that's something to bear in mind. Just looking. I've had quite a few emails in the past 10 days from people who want to borrow money. And, you know, if what I'm saying seems really, really simple, which I think it is really simple, you know, people are not doing the simple things. So I think it's really, the other thing is that a lot of lenders, you know, have got a lot of money, that they ain't got a lot of time. They want to see this as a sort of an executive summary, okay, but then you've got to be ready to back it up with evidence. So in order to produce an executive summary, you actually have to have the detail there. But the key is to look at that key information that you need to get across and get it across as concisely as you can.
This is so helpful because it's so concise and straightforward. Did you get that?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Sorry, I wasn't
Yeah, it's
freckled.
I'm also very conscious that it is so simple. It's almost like teaching grandma to suck eggs, and it's, you know, at what point. But you know, I'm taking some comfort in the fact that, you know, I've seen. I'm motivated to say this today from what I've seen in the last 10 days.
But the when, you know, I mean, obviously I've seen most of this before, right? I've not pushed for money myself, but just the when thing was illuminating, you know what I mean? That was one I hadn't got.
Yeah.
Because right, you end up with it not going out to work just in case that person may go ahead with that project.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the way that I structure it is the borrower always pays legals. So once we've chosen the borrower from this information, I then look at, I then go down the what I call the due diligence, the more detailed side of things, where I'll get the land registry. I'll start to look to evidence everything that's been said, and then there's more toings and froings really at that point. Interestingly, LTV I haven't even mentioned, and LTV is less of an issue here with peer borrowing. With institutional lenders, it's the main thing. And yes, of course, there's more security in lending with a lower LTV, but actually, you know, a peer lender is at liberty to lend 100% LTV. So I wouldn't get too hung up on LTV. I think that the other factors that I've mentioned tonight, you know, are much more important to the lender than the LTV. So I think I'm sharing my previous notes now, am I not? Can you see something on the share or not? Can you see something on share?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. Any other points, thoughts, questions?
Do you think there's a sort of cap on peer lending? I'm talking about, I suppose it depends on the person, doesn't it? How much money they've got. But is there an upper limit where you think, well, over that, it might be over 1 million, say, or whatever? you need to go somewhere else, institutional or private equity finance with a funding. Oh, what's the expression? You know, where a load of very rich individuals get together and they jointly peer lend, if you like.
I think it's a good question. One of the people, when I said we've got some funds available, said how much we got available, and I replied, I think we had about 350, and he said, no, I was looking for about 2 million. I kind of think he'll get it, you know. But yeah, clearly, Christine, there's a lot more people with £100,000 to lend than there is with $1 million, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so I think that practically there probably is a cap if there isn't any rule, you know, there's not a set rule, but I think practically, yes. I think that the point I made about first charge is interesting. It's common that a lender might want to lend all the 450 rather than 4 lots of 100, purely because he can have the first charge security if he does it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So sometimes, you know, it's easier to lend a lot, if you like. If you've got 450, sometimes it's easier to find one borrower and just go for it. The most I've ever lent to any one borrower was actually 450 in the past. And when you're lending at that level, you're normally lending to more experienced people. So you know it's the emotional decision making. The number isn't actually really having a big influence on that. You know, you're making that decision based on the quality of the borrower as you perceive it. You know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, when I was doing this stuff for clients, I would write the sort of reports that we're talking about when they were borrowing 20 million, 30 million, 60 million. So, I mean, but the principles are exactly the same, except instead of 3 sides of A4, it's, you know,
well, to be honest,
300 sides of A4.
Yeah, exactly. And the one thing that we're not looking to do is have forms filled out. You know how difficult it is with a mortgage application. You've got to find all those bank statements, and you've got to get all your SA 302s and all of this sort of stuff. And with this sort of peer borrowing, it's about providing the information in a very concise way, but having the ability to very quickly respond if a question comes back asking to evidence it.
Yeah.
So, you know, when somebody says, you know, your net worth, the lender doesn't really want to know what your cash is or what your house value and your mortgage liability is. It wants to know what your net worth is. So if you say my net worth is, you know, 1.5 million, then expect somebody to say, well, can you just give me a breakdown of your net worth?
Yeah.
But you're initially just going to be saying 1.5 million, you know. Have you borrowed, Christine, from peers before, from individuals?
Yeah, quite a long time ago. Not recently, but I am looking to do it now, actually. But on it's a sort of talk about jumping in at the deep end. This will be millions. Yeah. With some business partners. So, although it's not institutional borrowing, it is private equity funding. Yeah. But, you know, 20 million plus.
Really? And is that debt funding or is that equity-based funding?
This is, well, the funding is coming from a group of individuals who have effectively a sort of nominated leader, if you like, who's a wealth man, a bit like a fund manager, but for their personal, you know, liquid assets.
But is it going to be a loan or is it going to be an equity-based investment?
No, it's a loan. It's a loan secured on the assets.
Really?
Yeah.
And
And
what?
the interesting thing is when you get to that sort of level,
Yeah.
you know, Rupert, you're talking about skin in the game and what have you. But they're much more interested. If someone's talking about lending you 25 million, they're much more interested in the security of the lending, rather than what you're going to put into it, other than your expertise and experience. They're interested in what the thing's worth now and what it's going to be worth when you finish your project.
Yeah, I can get that. And I mean, obviously, that's always the case, because when you've got this sort of fund manager and these people behind it, it kind of starts to be a bit more institutional, doesn't it? You know, the fund
they certainly want a very institutional type report.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is they don't want, they just wanted a report from me. They don't want a report with, they don't want to value, you know, they wanted effectively a residual valuation, a full blown, but they didn't want one as a valuation. It was purely an advisory guidance report, if you like.
But ultimately, there's one person whose head is on the chopping block if it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
And, you know,
and it's not mine this time, thank God.
and that person is the person that needs to be able to evidence that they asked the right questions before the thing actually went off. But the other thing I'd say on that as well is that when you're up in that sort of stratosphere, the legal fees to call in the charge are relatively small.
Oh yeah.
Whereas
the legal fees to get the thing done are relatively high.
Yeah, but then when you know, if I'm lending 120,000 and if I'm thinking I've got to call in a charge and actually take over that property, you know, the costs of doing that are going to far outweigh any earnings I've made on that loan, and probably eat into a bit of the capital as well.
Yeah.
And so I'm in for a capital loss, you know. So I'm thinking, although I want the security, that it would be an absolute disaster if I have to call in the security. Yeah. Whereas when you've got a project that you're talking about, you know, the relative, you know, you've got the funds, you've got the ability, the clout to be able to use the best lawyers to call in the security.
Yeah.
And then if you've got sufficient headroom with the LTV, you're actually not going to lose any capital out of it.
No, indeed.
Yeah. So it's a slightly different sort of emphasis, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, completely. But this is why I was interested in the smaller project type peer financing, if you know, because it's something I haven't done.
Yeah. And this is where, you know, I come back to the point. If I'm lending to a really experienced borrower and a really developer who's worth 15 million personally, I'm not that bothered about the first charge.
No.
I'll take it if it's there, but I'm never going to be wanting to call in that first charge, even if the whole thing goes bump. You know, I'm just going to go for the personal guarantee.
Yeah.
You know, and if it takes me 5-10 years to get the money back because it's illiquid, but at least I know that they've got the assets for me to actually, you know, and for the rest of their life they're going to owe me that money, and ultimately through the courts I can get that money back. You know.
Yeah, sure.
So the first charge to me is less important in that regard. What's really important to me is the experience of the person, the experience of them being a borrower, and their own net wealth.
Yeah.
So I was surprised, you know, I put out that we had some funding available. I was surprised with the number of people in Unity who actually came to me, put bids in. And, you know, people are not talking much about them needing money, you know. So I would have thought perhaps we're missing something here. Perhaps we should know a little bit more about people who are looking for money and you know, have a little bit more support for that, because you know, it goes hand in hand with doing deals, and it's as important. Having that flow of money is as important to actually having a flow of deals. The other thing I'm not going to talk about tonight, but I think is a really key part of the whole of this subject area, is where do you go to find the people who've got the money in the first place? So that's why I thought maybe if we put a more formal workshop together, and we you know, this what we talked about tonight will only be one section of it.
Yeah, I think that'd be really useful, actually, really useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good.
Mm. We could do it out here in Portugal, Graham, if you ever get out.
If I ever get out, yeah.
You're struggling with the D7.
I've not submitted the application yet because I don't want to do it before having the accommodation sorted.
Yeah, sure.
Actually, I'm coming out for a week, Rupert, so I'll come and see you. First week of November.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, put it in the diary. I look forward to that.
Yeah, I'll let you know. Yeah, I haven't arranged flights yet, but I've been invited out, so I'm going to be staying at a friend's place.
Right.
He's not too far from about half an hour, I think.
Okay. Do you know the name of the town?
I've forgotten. It's in the Golden Triangle, so not too far from Faro.
Right. Okay. All right. No, that'd be great.
Cool. Yeah, look forward to it.
Mm. Anybody got anything else they want to chip in with? Somebody's left in the room. Nothing else to say, so we'll sign off.
Yeah, very helpful. Can you publish the documents to us?
Actually, what I need to do is stop the recording now, don't I? Yeah, of course I can. Yeah. They're very sort of, you know, as you can see, they're not very put together.
Usually,
yeah.
it takes us through in some kind of logical sequence what we discuss
Yeah.
tonight.
Good. Hang on a minute.